Hey, Tyrone here. This is the very first video to my channel. I'm not quite sure exactly how to start it, but that's okay. I just want to give a little bit of, I guess, a debrief on like who I am and that kind of thing. I guess it's a good start. So my name is Tyrone. I'm from a little town in Ontario, Canada. You can see it's quite beautiful here. I've lived here quite a bit of my life, although I lived in Ottawa for a little while in the nation's capital, which I absolutely miss. But not to get into any specifics or anything, at the end of the day, that's not what this channel's about. It's not a narcissistic, egotistical thing at all. It's more about just discussion, political ideology, and all that kinds of stuff. I know it sounds a little boring, but hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun with it. So before we really get started, I have a few ground rules for my channel because, well, with the kind of world state we're in and the way people are, with people talking about how they feel and what they think and logic and emotion, it's really starting to feel like a battle zone. And I want to avoid that because at the end of the day, I respect you regardless of who you are, regardless of your opinion. Unless you're a Nazi, I don't really respect your opinion, but at the end of the day, as long as you don't go around hurting anybody, I don't think you're the worst thing in the world. There are definitely worse people if you're not out there hurting people. So right away, I just kind of want to make it clear that there are kind of four modes of conversation that I tend to engage in, and the angle that I kind of tend to take it from, they're in pairs. So the first two are macroscopic and microscopic, and basically what that means is I will discuss things sometimes from sort of a more statistics standpoint, talk about what the actual numbers are and that kind of thing. And oftentimes that doesn't allow a lot of room for sort of unique differences between individuals. It sort of averages things out. So when you're talking about it, it can almost sound like you're being extremely discriminatory. And that's, I think, simply because of the nature of statistics. Statistics tend to discriminate data sets in order to create a meaning out of it. But whether or not a data set is representative of what's going to happen or what's been happening, it's sort of a snapshot at a particular period of time. So when you're talking about sort of the macroscopic angle of it, you'll often you'll lose out on talking about some of the smaller little trends and the little aberrations and the patterns and stuff like that that can actually point to different changes and things that are to come. So that's why when I talk about the microscopic side of things, we'll be hearing more about what individuals do, the minor differences between, the statistically, this is what sort of the average is. But there are tons of people out there who behave in this way that are in that data set that don't quite follow the line. And where does that come from? Where's that pattern coming from? Is there some kind of socioeconomic thing or sociocultural thing going on there that's influencing people to sort of grow, or what's the pattern ultimately from society standpoint that is leading to whatever changes, and what are those changes? Where are we going, and are we consciously steering ourselves, or are we just emotionally driven at this point, where we're literally just kind of not paying attention to where we're going and hoping that our emotions guide us in the right direction. So that's the microscopic and macroscopic angle of things. And that's one big differentiation when you hear me talking. Sometimes you may find yourself even offended by something I say. Just try to ask yourself, hey, is he talking from his own personal opinion, or is this something from a data set of statistics? And even from there, I would ask you to challenge my data sets if you happen to know there's anything that's maybe newer, more well studied, with better controls, or whatever the case may be. I mean, if you have anything to offer from an academic standpoint to what I'm talking about, by all means do it. But please try not to add any ad hominem attacks, that kinds of stuff. That's one thing that I find happens so often. Just because we disagree, or the data set that I'm using isn't exactly what you're agreeing with at that particular point in time, it doesn't mean that I'm going to immediately throw out what it is that you have to say or the information that you have. I may argue with it. I may look at, the different aspects that, make it justified or legitimate, and we may even debate a little bit, but there's nothing wrong with a debate as long as both sides are willing to listen to each other. The other sort of pair of modes of thoughts that I have is ideal versus pragmatic. So when I talk about the ideal, ultimately it's exactly what it sounds like. It's ideally where I think we should be heading as a society, what measures we should be trying to take, that kind of thing. And well, actually no, the ideals and measures we're trying to take is from the pragmatic side. The ideal is literally just where should we be in the future? Like what does the picture of what that looks like, what does it look like? And at the end of the day, then my pragmatic side is more, what can we do today to make today look more like what I think tomorrow should be? And I'm constantly trying to marry the two. I'm changing what I think the future should look like based on what's going on today and vice versa. Anything new insights that I have or whatnot in terms of the ideal, I'm constantly changing that, and usually it's changed because of some kind of new insight about what's pragmatically going on today type of thing. So at the end of the day, I hope to sort of build two ends of a bridge towards each other instead of just argue till I'm blue in the face with people about how I've grown to know that it should be. I'm constantly prepared to adjust and constantly prepared to look at my model and say, well, what's going on here? How can I change this to be more realistic and more something that would be acceptable to a large majority of people? Because I think that's important. I think having a society that people agree with is a big part of life in general and getting along. And we haven't been doing a very good job of that lately. So I try to be just somebody who's sort of a mediator, a centrist. People think I come off as if I'm a righty, but righties think I come off as though I'm a lefty. So at the end of the day, it's hard to put me in a box, but a lot of people just disagree with me because I try to do the compromise thing. I try to find that middle ground that bridges everybody. And when you do that, you find yourself trying to suggest where they should let themselves compromise to each side, instead of being somebody who just is a blind supporter, which I think there's a lot of that, and that's how a lot of the zealotry and extremism and all that kinds of stuff has come out in society. And I think we have a responsibility as people who are maybe more moderate to come out and talk about, more moderate ideas and more bipartisan sort of relationships need to be built. So that's what this channel is going to kind of try to be. The one thing before sort of ending this disclaimer I want to get across is that sometimes this channel may not be quite safe space environment. It's not always going to be the most friendly for people who find themselves easily offended. And that's not because my personal opinion happens to be, supportive of any type of hateful, anything like that. It's that when it comes down to the bare facts and really getting down to the nitty-gritty, I will not censor anything that, comes from the data sets and the stats. Yes, it's important to pay attention to sources and that sort of thing, which is going to be part of what the dialogue we have is sources and that sort of thing, which I'm sure I'll have an episode about journalism in general coming up. But at the end of the day, I just want people to be aware that I'm not trying to offend you. I'm just trying to be honest. And I'm just trying to make sure that the dialogue that we have is truthful and that we're not hiding ourselves from realities that will eventually catch up to us. So at the end of the day, I hope you enjoy the videos that I make, and hopefully we'll all get along and be able to have some productive conversations. So my name is Tyrone, and this will be the Outspoken Citizen.